Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show Divisional Round Game-by-Game Preview Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. And yeah, it's a great day to break down the final 8 teams remaining in what's so far been a very fun to watch NFL playoffs. Of course, joining me, we got Dwain "The Rock" McFarland in the house. Dwain, can you name the wide receiver who leads the NFL in yards per target with a minimum of 50 targets?
Yards per target with a minimum of 50 targets. Puka Nacua.
Kayshon Boutte, Patriots wide receiver 1, 2, 3, kind of depends on the week. But dudes are making plays, man. There's only 4 over 11. Boutte, Alec Pierce, JSN, and Jameson Williams. Good football players, Dwayne.
Yeah, good football players. Kayshon Boutte, like, it's one of these deals where, like, he was so highly hyped as a recruit coming into LSU. I remember I was actually in a Devy league and I selected him, Ian. So maybe that's like been my issue with Kayshon Boutte, is my expectations were just set so high with that LSU helmet emblem and how highly he was recruited. He never really turned into something huge in my Devy league, but yeah, he has had a good season.
If you guys want to know the sickest form of fantasy football, it's these things called C2C leagues, which are campus to Canton leagues, where you literally are getting these guys as like youngins in college football, and then ideally watching them play all the way through Canton. But shout out to my friend Eric Froton for usually heading that up. Shout out college fantasy football. You guys are truly sick savages, and I appreciate your service. But again, we'll stick to the plan. Again, we are going through the 4 divisional round matchups today here on the Fantasy Live Show. So let's get things started with our DraftKings opening lines. Game at number 1 Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern. We got the Broncos hosting the Bills. Denver 1.5 point home faves. Game total resting at 46. Obviously, the Broncos coming off a first round bye. Wouldn't exactly call them the most dominant 1 seed in the world when you do look at, again, some of their just overall team efficiency measures. Very good, particularly on defense, but again, more so just above average as opposed to completely dominant. Finishing, I believe, 11-2 in 1-score games certainly helps matters there. Meanwhile, the Bills overcame what was a frisky Jaguar squad. That was a fun game last weekend. Won on the road, though, to make it to the divisional round for their 6th straight season. Long away. I mean, Bills, Dwayne, like, again, you've been on this planet a little bit longer than I have. I'm not trying to make any jokes about that. It's just a fact of the matter. But, man, like the Bills, I know they had their Super Bowl run in the 90s, but that was like 25 years of a lot of despair afterwards, man. I mean, I know Bills fans want to get that elusive Super Bowl, but this has been an incredible team for the better part of the last half decade.
Yeah, look, you had your 4 in a row. Couldn't win the Super Bowl, which that's a great documentary, by the way, guys. If I can't remember if that's on Netflix or what channel that is on, but it's a really good documentary if you haven't checked it out. But yes, the Bills were, Ian, like kind of they were the whipping boys of the NFL whenever the Cowboys were coming onto the scene, which really hooked me into football. Was watching football every weekend with my dad. The Cowboys were in their second heyday, I guess. They had already had one heyday era before that, but we're talking Aikman, Emmett, Irvin, Charles Haley on defense, a really dominant squad. And, I'll be honest, I remember the second time we had to face the Bills, I was like, man, like, can we play a different team? And then we got the Steelers the next year, and we kicked their butts as well. Sorry, Steelers, out of the playoffs. Mike Tomlin also no longer your head coach. But yeah, the Bills this year, Ian, it does feel like a huge opportunity for them. I mean, they're 1.5 point underdogs this weekend against Denver. But man, if you tell me that we're going to have a close game, and I have to pick, like, you're going with the team that has Josh Allen, man. I know we'll get more into this matchup and breaking it down, but Josh Allen in the playoffs, you don't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes. There's no Joe Burrow out there. It just feels like this is the time for the Bills to get back to the Super Bowl and have a shot at, pulling on that victory. I know 0-4 early on hurt, but if the Bills made the Super Bowl, it would be a great game.
Because again, if we were probably just going through trying to rank like the most elite main characters, if you will, of this game, that Broncos defense is nasty. Pat Surtain and company, obviously, always have been putting forward a great showing for themselves this season. But I'm with you, man. Josh Allen really does win out. The question is, if the Broncos are having, 2 through 5 in the scale of trying to grade out the best overall units, can that be enough to take down Mr. 17? Luckily, Mother Nature should not be a factor in this one. Temperature is expecting to be around 50, winds under 10 miles per hour, and no precipitation. But we will start off with the home team, Dwayne. And let's face it, the one way to really get going on the Bills this year has been to run the ball down their freaking throats. We saw that last week. Travis Etienne and Bashaw Tootin had just they had 118 yards on just 14 carries. Only the Giants on the season have actually been worse in terms of EPA per rush than the Buffalo Bills. Do you think, Dwayne, that RJ Harvey and company can get it done on the ground? Because, yeah, he's had some good moments, scored a lot of touchdowns, and really has impressed as a receiver. But let's face it, man, since J.K. Dobbins left the picture, this hasn't exactly been the world's best rushing offense.
Yeah, so on my show sheet, I wrote down, a key to success for every game, and like you just hit it. I think the big question is, can the Broncos take advantage of the Bills' run defense? And then really, honestly, like get Bo Nix going in the run game. We've seen that occasionally this year, not every game though. So if they have a game plan where they're going to let Bo Nix use his legs, really feed RJ Harvey, and that ends up working out, I do think that that's the recipe, because it's a really close matchup, man. If you look at it, when the Broncos are on offense, they've got the 12th ranked EPA per play offense, but passing, right? They're 8th, but they've got to play the Bills passing defense, which is really good. Like it's 6th overall in EPA per play at 0.11. So that's going to be a tough matchup, but that weakness is against the Bills run defense. They actually rank 31st in EPA per play at minus 0.10. So RJ Harvey, I think a big key to the success. If we look at him over these last 4 contests, he's averaging 13.8 attempts, 4 targets as well. So getting 17.8 opportunities per game. He's got a 77 utilization score. Hasn't been crazy with it, Ian. 13.9 fantasy points per game. Basically, he's had 2 like below average outings, but he's also had 2 really good ones at 22.1 and 18.6 fantasy points. So if you guys are playing in any of these postseason contests, over on Underdog, Guillotines, or maybe you're just playing in a DFS slate, if you're going with the theory that the Broncos win the game, I do think that RJ Harvey has to be a centerpiece of how you think that happens.
Again, getting that utilization ever since Dobbins has gone down, just unfortunately hasn't been doing a ton with it. Actually, the fourth worst running back in the league this year in rushing yards over expected per carry per next gen stats. So we'll see what happens on the ground. And Dwain, this was interesting because you mentioned the EPA numbers for the Broncos passing game. And I looked those up too for Bo Nix specifically. And I was actually surprised to see that he was 11th in the EPA per dropback, because everything else is quite bad, man. Among 38 quarterbacks, 28th in passer rating, 31st in yards per attempt, 28th in explosive pass play rate. And I even looked at the fourth quarter because, just in my mind, it was like, all right, we had the Giants and the Eagles and some of these comebacks where he really did play great football late. Just relative to other quarterbacks, man, it's not like he's taken much of a leap up, even when you are just looking at the last 15 minutes of game time. So I do think the reason why that EPA is where it is because that does take into account things like sacks, which, let's face it, that really has been Bo Nix's superpower, if you will. Yep. Overall, in his career, in terms of sack rate, which is, again, just looking at pass attempts and total sacks, and you need to take that, division there, or just plug in the chat GPT like everyone does these days. But Dwain, 10th best sack percentage of all time, 1 spot ahead of Drew Brees. Doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. I mean, that does seem to be the best part of this passing game, is not making mistakes, which, hey, when you got that defense, I understand trying to prioritize that. But just looking at this passing game, we know Courtland Sutton is the one. He's capable of winning 50-50 balls, and that's great. But do you really think there's someone that actually can go ahead and break out if the Bills are able to slow down Sutton?
Yeah, just real quick on Nix, I think you hit on the important thing, which is the sacks, but he's also a scrambler at key times, and scramble does add to your EPA per dropback as well. And then it's also Sean Payton's scheme. I mean, you mentioned Drew Brees. We're not saying Bo Nix is Drew Brees. We're also not saying Drew Brees was purely a system quarterback, but it's an offense built on getting the ball out, on time for the most part. They're still going to take their shots down the field. Then you get a lot of easy passes to the running backs, a lot of screens, a lot of stuff around the scrimmage. So, and I think the Broncos, the other thing is they just do a nice job of staying balanced, with their play calling, keeping the opposing defense in a situation where they don't know for sure what's coming. And again, to your point, the Broncos defense feeds into that, because if you've got a defense that you can lean on, you never have to be in this frenetic state where, oh my God, we got to throw the ball all the time, and you can be an unpredictable offense because the game is close. That is also really helping Bo Nix. As far as the receivers go, one of them will be RJ Harvey, and we talked about his target, so I think he's going to be a key component. Obviously, Courtland Sutton is the top guy here, but the Bills, whenever you look at them on defense, Ian, they do a good job of typically taking away the top options of the opposing offense. So it's not like the Bills have like this superstar, cast. But this is where I will give, their coaching staff credit. I know we bang on them a lot on offense where it's like, okay, you don't use your best players enough. We'll get into, some of that here in a minute for the Bills. But on defense, man, they really are a good defense, and specifically against the pass, which I talked about earlier. So I think, honestly, you need one of these secondary players to come up for you in this game. I think Courtland Sutton is a guy they will try to take away. I mean, Courtland Sutton might get his 50 to 60 yards, but I do have a hard time seeing him go off in this game. Like, I feel like the Bills are probably going to account for him. So will it be Pat Bryant? I don't know. Will it be Troy Franklin? They're pretty close. If you look at the last 4 games where they've both been healthy, Ian, because it hasn't always worked out that way. Pat Bryant's missed 2 games over the last 6. 71% routes for Bryant, 20% targets per route run. Troy Franklin, who was really the wide receiver 2 early in the season, not far behind though, 60% routes, but only a 16% targets per route run. I will say this though, of the 2, I feel like Franklin is the guy that can come up with the big play, right? They can just really make a difference for you. Pat Bryant might be able to, but really so far he's really been more of a possession receiver. But I think it's one of those 2 guys. I would say Evan Ingram, but the dude's not on the field. I mean, some games he has like a 40% route participation rate. I'm kind of surprised that the Broncos don't use him more. So I feel like Pat Bryant or Troy Franklin coming up with a big play in this game is going to be a key for the Broncos.
I know I've talked a lot about just the abysmal deep ball connection between Bo Nix and Troy Franklin over these past 2 seasons. Well, one of those 3 passes that they have hit at least 30 yards downfield did come in that wild card matchup against the Bills last season. So, Dwayne, just 3 kind of keys to success for the Broncos offense if they are going to go out there and have themselves a good game. Bo Nix, limit the negative plays, both in terms of turnovers and sacks. RJ Harvey and also Bo Nix get going on the ground, have a successful run game to really take advantage of what the Bills are worse at on D, and then have someone beyond Courtland Sutton step up and create an explosive play or 2. Sound about right?
Sounds about right. Yep, I'm with you on it.
And with that, let's move on to the Josh Allen-led Buffalo Bills offense. Obviously, Josh Allen went ahead and put on his superhero cape last week. It really was just a performance where, man, I think he kind of missed like 1 deep ball to Brandon Cooks, but otherwise it really is tough to go through that game and find many, if any, other negative plays. So the dude has been balling, but unfortunately, Dwayne, no Josh Palmer, no Gabe Davis. I mean, at some point, you just need someone to be able to go out there and catch the football. And now, obviously, we have a much tougher defense on hand with the Broncos. So Jaguars are very good in their own right. I mean, that was hardly a cakewalk, but looking at this, you would like to think that, again, if someone's going to step up beyond Josh Allen, it's got to be James Cook here.
Yeah, man, James Cook, and we've talked about it multiple times, like, why not get this guy a little bit more involved in the passing game? I'm not saying you got to give him everything. Ty Johnson, they didn't have last week, and so they just gave the passing down role to Ray Davis. We'll see what happens with Ty Johnson this week, but here's what I can tell you. Like, if I'm a Denver Bronco, the guy I don't want to see catching the ball out of the backfield is James Cook, just because he can do the most with it after the catch. And again, Ty Johnson's been good in that area, guys. He is a good receiving back, but James Cook is the guy that strikes fear into the opposing defense. Also helps keep you away from your tendencies, right? Which is tipping off what kind of play you're going to run, because the defense knows when James Cook is out there, it's often going to be a run play, versus when Ty Johnson's out there, it's often going to be a pass play. Now, I get it. Just comes down to execution, execute the play that you've got at hand. So yeah, I do agree with you on James Cook. And it's man, this is really a good matchup. Like, this is a tough matchup. If you look at the Bills offense passing, they are 5th in EPA per dropback at 0.15. But you look at the Denver Broncos defense, they're 7th in passing defense and EPA given up per play. Then if you look at it on the ground, you've got the Bills sitting there at 2nd overall in EPA per play. And then you look over here on the other side with the Broncos, though, and they're 5th against the run in EPA per play. So this is going to be a really close game. But I do think, getting James Cook going, obviously they did it last week without James Cook getting it going, and they kept things close. And obviously at the end of the game, you got the ball in Josh Allen's hands. He did what he needed to do against the Jaguars. So I think the interesting thing, Ian, is, like you mentioned it, with all these other pass catchers out, can another receiver step up? Because Tyrell Shavers is also out. Like, he was just put on IR. Yeah. So you got 3 guys, and it's not that these were great players, guys, but the wide receiver room is getting really thin. I can't believe, Ian, that you didn't lead the show, with Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel returning in 2 full practices. I just figured that this would be a Curtis Samuel segment.
Here to save the day. Come on, Curtis. But no, man, when I was actually trying to look at, again, what pass catcher could step up, I'd like it to be James Cook. But, man, 5 or fewer receiving yards in 4 of his last 5 games. I mean, he's just not even really getting a chance to do much there. Obviously, Khalil Shakir has been doing awesome in the playoffs. I think he's got like 5 straight games with at least 6 catches. So he'll get his fair share of screens and stuff. But this Broncos defense actually has run, I believe, the 3rd most man coverage this year. And Khalil, just with the way he kind of, sits in those underneath areas against zone, he's one of these rare wide receivers who actually is better against zone-heavy defenses than man-heavy groups. And you start going through the numbers, Dwayne, it's like, all right, well, Keon Coleman's gotten a few extra targets here against man coverage. Good luck with that, Keon against Pat Surtain and company. I think, not necessarily the wild card, but just the key factor here where I think if the Bills are going to win this game, we're going to expect a big box score. It's got to be Dalton Kincaid, man. I mean, we're talking about a guy this season, first in yards per route run among tight ends, but that's not even how good he's been overall. When you include the playoffs this year, only JSN and Puka Nacua have had a better yards per route run mark than Dalton Kincaid on this season. Again, so efficient, but unfortunately, due to injuries, I think mostly hasn't had that full-time role. But man, without these wide receivers now, what better time to do so than now? And if there was one weakness with this Broncos D, look, and I think part of this is because of how dominant they are against wide receivers. They kind of funnel production to tight ends. But yeah, man, they're one of only 10 defenses in the league to allow over 1,000 yards to opposing tight ends this year. Zach Ertz had over 100. Travis Kelce had 91 and a tud in the game. Daniel Bellinger, Tyler Warren, Dalton Schultz, Theo Johnson, like all these guys had themselves some pretty good games against the Broncos. So again, if we really had to try to paint, the three keys to success for this Bills offense, I would say Josh Allen, Josh Allen, give us another 50 yards rushing and a touchdown, get James Cook going, and then let Dalton Kincaid feast because, man, on his opportunities this year, that's all he's been doing.
Yeah, on my show sheet, key to success, I had Josh Allen go be Josh Allen because I can't depend on this coaching staff to utilize these players as much as like Joe Brady's getting this steam in the offseason about being a coach. Dude, he plays with Josh Allen, guys. Really, is he running some great scheme? Josh Allen is out here carrying this team. I remember the Joe Brady that everyone wanted fired in Carolina, and I still think that that's the same guy that we have here, Ian. He just happens to be playing with Josh Allen this time around. This is malpractice, what's going on right now with Dalton Kincaid. This also a guy that you spent your first round pick on in 2023 when you absolutely need players out there that you can depend on to make big plays. And to your point, Kincaid's first in yards per route run for tight ends, third overall. He's at 2.67. He's second for all tight ends with at least 200 routes and targets per route run at 24%. So if you are a subscriber to the fact that players earn their targets, basically quarterbacks drop back and they know who they want to throw the ball to, they know more way than us. They know who their best players are. And when Dalton Kincaid is out there, that is the guy that, Josh Allen's looking for more than anybody at a 24% targets per route run. So I would agree. Why not give this guy a 60-70% route participation? Look, I'm not even saying you gotta go through the roof, but man, these games where you're at 50, 55%, that's just insane, especially with all the injuries that you have. Just let him play in the slot the whole game. Move Khalil Shakir outside. You can still run like routes and like Z concepts and things like that and give him his same kind of routes. Just let Dalton Kincaid get out there and play more. So I'm with you. Love the keys to the game. I do have one prop bet for this game, and it comes back to Khalil Shakir. Ooh. If you look at him, he does have a larger role, guys, and this is part of that condensed, wide receiver room that we've seen that's getting tighter and tighter. 81% routes over the last 4 games, 26% targets, 12.1 fantasy points per game. He's giving you 65, 34, 35, and 82 receiving yards in those games. However, I haven't projected for 43 yards in this game, guys. And so the projection model does dock for who you're playing. It looks at your previous production. It looks at all sorts of things. His prop is at 49.5 right now. He's going under that. I will take the Khalil Shakir under. He's only beat that number 41% of the time, and now you're telling me that with the Broncos knowing he could be a focal point of the Bills' offense, he's going to come out against one of the best secondaries in the league, and we want to put an over bet on that. Now, you're going to have to do some shopping around. Make sure you get a good line. Don't bet this at like minus 200 or anything like that, but I would just say I want the under on 49.5 as far as Khalil Shakir goes, and honestly, I would probably wait to bet this because the closer we get to games, the more and more the overs push up, just to give yourself a little bit of extra cushion, Ian.
Hey, goes hand in hand with some of the man zone split stuff we were talking about before. So injuries, Broncos, very healthy, which tends to happen when, again, you get that first round bye. With the Bills, mentioned some of the wide receiver stuff already. Ty Johnson still not practicing. Josh Allen is in full, obviously had that right finger and foot issue, but he seems to be fine. Ed Oliver, though, actually back at practice in a limited fashion would be huge for that Bills run D if he could return. Maxwell Harrison and Jordan Poyer not practicing, unfortunately, for that, Bills secondary. So takes us to the prediction. I'm going with Josh Allen, Dwayne. Give me the Bills 17, the Broncos 14. I think Josh Allen is the best player in the game. Broncos defense, second best group in the game, just behind Josh Allen. I get it. I just don't quite think. I don't have enough confidence in the Broncos run game and just Bo Nix as a whole taking advantage of the weaknesses in Buffalo. So give me the Bills 17-14. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a home game for the Broncos. They're 1.5 point favorites, but that I just look at that and I look at all the matchup stuff that we just talked about and how close this game is. And in that sort of scenario, I just want to go with the best player on the planet right now, and that's Josh Allen, because it's going to probably come down to a final drive. If that final drive is for Denver, how much confidence do I have in Bo Nix and the Broncos being able to pull it off? Like, I have some. I'm not completely against it. But if the last possession is Josh Allen, I don't care who the defense is. I think he's going to go down the field and he's going to get whatever amount of points are needed, whether that's a field goal or whether that's scoring 6, whether that's scoring 7, or whether it means you got to get the 2-point conversion to tie the game and send it to overtime. Like, I'm going to bet on Josh Allen in this game. So I've got the Bills to win and cover.
And guess what? It's basically 1st and 9 for the Bills on any given down and distance because, as we know, they can get that tush push whenever they want at this point. So good stuff there, Mr. Dwain. 3 more matchups to get to everyone. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the best way to get in on the action. Now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. All you have to do is download DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. Once you're in, use your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, spreads, money lines, or jump into live betting and stay locked in on each and every play. So here's your play. New customers turn $5 into $300 if your bet wins. Paid out in bonus bets. The crown is yours. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this to make this NBA season one to remember. Note that minimum minus 500 odds are required. Saturday Night Football, 8 p.m. Eastern. We got the Seahawks hosting the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle, a 7-point home favorite. The game total here at 45. Obviously, the Seahawks, also like Denver, well-rested after having earned the NFC's number 1 seed, while the 49ers came away from the wild card round with yet another key injury. Unfortunately, tight end George Kittle with that torn Achilles will be out for the year. So maybe we'll be getting all-world linebacker Fred Warner back. That would be cool, but how healthy is he going to be coming back from his own catastrophic injury remains to be seen. So whether, again, not expected to be too much of a problem here. Luckily, temperature in the 40s, calm winds, and no precipitation. So good news there. Not so good news with the Seahawks offense as of late, Dwain, depending on how you want to look, okay? This passing game in the first half of the season, incredible. It really just was. I mean, Sam Darnold, 3rd in EPA per dropback, 1st in yards per attempt. Weeks 10 through 18, though, 27th in EPA per dropback. His yards per attempt has gone down by 2.1. So this has coincided with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker in the ground game actually getting going late, which obviously when you got a defense like Mike McDonald and company, that is good. But Dwain, Sam Darnold has been seeing a lot of ghosts here over the course of the past 2 months.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to the game for the Seahawks is Sam Darnold can't get rattled and start turning the ball over, take some weird strip sack fumble that flips field position and gives the 49ers a chance to really, establish a lead or just hang in the game. But if Darnold just plays under control, right? Doesn't have the freak out moment, seeing the ghost, things like that. I just think that the Seahawks are clearly, the better team here, Ian. I mean, you talked about it on the passing game, has been down over the second half of the season. For the year, like they're an above average passing attack, right? And if you're the opposing defense, you know what you have to do. You have to take away JSN. The question is, like, do the 49ers have what it takes to take away Jackson Smith and Jigba? I mean, if you look at them right now, their passing defense is 26th in EPA per dropback allowed, minus 0.10 per play. And obviously a lot of that, guys, comes down. I get it, 49ers fans, don't get mad at me. Get mad at the injuries or the electrical plant that sits next to the facilities that are apparently, causing the injury problems in the conspiracy theorist world. But they're just not healthy, man. They don't have Bosa, one of their top pass, rushers. They're so banged up right now. Even if they get Fred Warner back, it's not going to remedy this pass defense. Even if he came back 100%. It's not going to change the way this defense really looks against the pass. So I just don't know that the 49ers have an answer for Jackson Smith and Jigba, especially with a week off to really scheme things up, Ian, and get innovative, come up with some new ideas of some wrinkles that really the 49ers probably won't have seen coming into this game. So yes, I do think that Darnold is the key. If he gets rattled, man, especially when he's back inside his own 10-yard line or whenever he gets into the red zone, the 2 most critical areas are where this guy gets rattled. So that's the thing that would give the San Francisco 49ers a chance. Otherwise, if you look at this matchup across the board, it really does say that the Seahawks should be the winners. Man, they've averaged 11.2 margin of victory. That's first in the NFL. They've really handled their opponents. So I think the line is set appropriately here at the 7. Did open at 7.5, now sitting at a 7.
San Fran, and this is going to sound ridiculous, has done a pretty good job against JSN relative to other defenses. Now, a pretty good job versus Jackson Smith and Jigba constitutes him still gaining 208 yards in their two matchups, but no touchdowns. And again, he's had to do it kind of on 15 receptions. So no massive plays being allowed for the most part. So again, we'll see what happens there. But I do think that goes right into three keys for the Seahawks offense. Dwayne, you said it. Darnold, be under control. Don't make that backbreaking mistake and give the 49ers a short fields or easy touchdowns that obviously, with your defense you have going, you should be trying to prevent. JSN, go be JSN, which has been, let's face it, one of, if not the single best wide receivers on planet Earth this year. And then, keep that run game moving. Mentioned before, weeks 1 through 9, just a 26th ranked offense in designed EPA per rush, and all the way up to the 7th, though, in weeks 10 through 18. So Zach Charbonnet, someone, guys, where I know we've given him a lot of slander, and early on in the year he was playing bad, but really has turned it around in the second half. So, annoying for Kenneth Walker, but don't be, bemoaning the coaching staff using him. Our guy Charb has been very, very nice. So 49ers defense, you said it, Dwayne, just so banged up. I have a hard time expecting them to be getting in the way too much. So would you agree those are kind of the three main goals here for Seattle? Limit the mistakes, JSN, go ball out, and then, keep the run game going.
Yeah, I think the one other thing was just take away CMC in the passing game. I know that's hard, but you really want to force Brock Purdy to push the ball down the field to his receivers, give the Seattle defense a chance to make a play on the ball. You don't want to be giving up these easy underneath conversions of CMC because he's proven time and time again this year. If you let him do that, he's going to come through. He's going to come through in a big way. So they did a nice job in the last game against CMC, both on the ground as well as in the passing game. So I would say if you can take that away and really make Purdy have to force it downfield to Juwan Jennings, as well as potentially Ricky Pearsall, who's had 2 limited practices, without George Kittle, man, Jake Tonjes and these guys, I just want to take away CMC in the passing game.
100% with you on that being the primary goal of that Seahawks defense, which again, we'll start focusing on right now. And Christian McCaffrey, incredible on the season. Okay. Everything he's done for an offense that hasn't been as dominant at the line of scrimmage outside as Trent Williams as maybe some people expect. But in these two matchups against the Seahawks, 92 rushing yards on 30 carries, but he's got 107 receiving yards on 17 targets. So still very much a demon in the pass game. And that is going to be important for the Seahawks to try to manage. That said, I do think it's doable, Dwayne, because the two things that really separate, in my opinion, the two best defenses in the NFL. Broncos are up there too, but for my money, it would be the Seahawks and the Texans. They create a ton of havoc. They actually are top 2, but they don't even have to blitz a lot to get it done. And it's one of these things that we've kind of heard as the kryptonite against Patrick Mahomes, over the years, and Tom Brady back in that Giants Super Bowl. Okay, just get a lot of pressure, create a lot of havoc with 4 guys, and then drop 7 back in the secondary and shut down the passing attack. Why doesn't everyone do it if it's just so easy, Dwayne?
Because not everyone has Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson as well as the Seahawks front 4. So and obviously McDonald's doing a great job there. What he's brought to that defense and the way that they're playing. So I think just looking at the 49ers from their perspective and why I think this line is so well set. As much as we like Juwan Jennings and we like Ricky Pearsall, it's not like we love either one of them. Ian, if CMC is held to a game like what we saw this last time that he was out, where he had 23 rushing yards and 34 receiving yards. Now in week 1, guys, he had 69 rushing yards and 73 receiving yards. So you got bookends of the season, week 1 and week 18 matchups. But if they can do something like what they do in week 17, the 49ers, they're in real trouble here.
Looking at potentially, the passing game for the 49ers, because again, they haven't had much success running the ball. I do think that Pearsall would be the guy, Dwayne. He had 108 yards on 7 targets against, the Seahawks this season, and he has kind of been the go-to target against zone, which I do think makes sense when you kind of watch his just chemistry with Brock Purdy. It really does seem like when Pearsall is healthy, they have a nice connection going. He is, quote, optimistic he will be playing this weekend. And again, they need him with so many injuries all around the offense. So Mike McDonald has done a good job against Purdy overall. Obviously, back in 2023, had that just complete low-light game against the Ravens, throwing 4 interceptions. But even in these last 4 matchups against the Seahawks as well, haven't seen Purdy eclipse 300 yards, his yards per attempt, just 4.7, 7.9, 9.1, and 5.7. So not completely getting shut down each and every time out, but for someone who literally is number 1 in NFL history in yards per attempt, have not seen Kyle Shanahan and company grooving as much as usual against this group. So again, hardly any weaknesses to be found for the Seahawks. If you did have to paint a path to victory, though, for the 49ers, right? If we wake up on Sunday and the 49ers won, what do you think would have had to go right here for the 49ers offense?
Well, it's just the flip to what we talked about on the Seahawks key to victories. It's that the 49ers rattled Sam Darnold, and they get some big turnovers. They flip field position. We know they have a good enough offense, Ian. Like they're seventh in EPA per dropback right now for the season at 0.14. So yes, the Seahawks have a very good secondary, but it has been a strength for the 49ers is their passing game. Now, you don't have George Kittle, which is obviously going to hurt, but Jake Tunges is at least like a viable option that can like go out there and, sit down in a zone and get open. But I think it's just Darnold. If they can find a way to get Darnold rattled, that is the huge key, because if he has a meltdown, anything's possible in this game.
Yeah. And again, I do think it has to kind of be a rock fight of sorts for the 49ers to win. But the problem is, I just don't think they have the personnel to win. And that honestly kind of goes right into the Seahawks' hands. So despite my preseason Super Bowl prediction being the 49ers against the Bills, I'm going to have to bail off that. Giving the Seahawks 16-10, Dwayne. I guess it's going to be an ugly game. But ultimately, I think in this game, the best unit is probably going to be that Seahawks defense. I think they have enough to get it done.
So you've got Seahawks winning and Niners covering. I'm going to go Seahawks win and cover. And I do have two prop bets real quick for this game. Jake Tunges right now is set at 4.5. I have that projected under that by a full reception. Look, I like Tunges, Ian, but even if we look at the games where you haven't had Kittle, he's got a 14% target share. I think we're getting a little bit carried away here. I also expect this number to come down with the news around Ricky Pearsall. So if this is one you guys want to bet, you probably need to do it as soon as you hear this. I think it'll continue to move lower than that because of Pearsall. The other one I'll say is, look, I've given under so far. You want an over? Fine. Let's do an over. Ian, over 6.5 reception for Jackson Smith and Jigba. He beat this in the first matchup against the 49ers. He was under this in the second matchup for the 49ers. But here's the big thing. He's beat this number 71% of the time on the season. And the 49ers don't have a good pass defense. Like, let's just keep this simple. I've got him projected for right around 7.5 catches, so a full catch over this. So under on Tunges receptions, over on JSN receptions for this game. Oh, and Seahawks win and cover. I did say that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well, I like the JSN call, especially because, look, obviously he'll have a great game. That's not a hot take. But just when you have watched these kind of slow starting games for JSN, they'll just start throwing a bunch of screens and stuff, man. So it's not like one of these, wide receivers who only is winning 10 plus yards downfield. Very easy in the Seahawks offense for them to go ahead and get their best players touches. What a novel concept. Moving on to Sunday, we got our 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff for the Patriots and Texans. Obviously, this one taking place in Foxborough, and it accordingly has the Patriots sitting as 3-point home favorites. Game total at 40.5. So neither team exactly had their best offensive showing, performance of the season last week, although both defenses really did look dominant over the Chargers and Steelers respectively. So weather should be a little bit worse than what we've been talking about, but albeit still not horrible. Temperatures around freezing, could see a little snow, but not a ton of wind. So starting things off with those Patriots, Dwayne, I was just wondering, because you watched last week, I think he took 5 sacks against the Chargers, and I was like, okay, does Drake May, is the way to getting to Drake May and just causing problems, just getting him under pressure? And the answer, not really, okay? He's the second best quarterback in the league in EPA per dropback when kept clean. When under pressure, though, he's also the second best quarterback. So the only kind of negative for Drake May is taking sacks. He's, bottom 12 in terms of his pressure dropbacks turning in to sacks. But, man, even then, it's not like it's this, giant red flag or anything. So, yeah, maybe the MVP of the league, pretty good at football, Dwayne. That's my conclusion here.
Yeah, look, it's another game where we've got strength on strength. And I mean, this is going to be a theme of the show. We've got the number 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9 EPA per play offenses in the playoffs. We've got the 1, 2, 7, 8, and 9 defenses per EPA in the playoffs. And this is just another one of those matchups. Patriots coming up against a very good pass defense. I think a key that you mentioned earlier with the Texans, Ian, what makes it work for them is that they can do it without bringing extra bodies. They can do it with just the 4, which allows them to maximize coverage. They also happen to have some really good cover players on the back end of these plays. Now, having said that, Drake May, it's the number 1 passing offense in the league as far as EPA per dropback. So, it's strength on strength there. I think if you look at the rushing game, you've got an average rushing attack. They're 19th in EPA per play, but that's a strength for the Texans. So that's a slight edge to the Texans. I think what this comes down to is the Patriots defense being good enough to stop CJ Stroud, especially if they don't have Nico Collins. I think we saw kind of a similar to game last week early on with the Chargers before it got out of hand for the Patriots. But the Chargers defense is also another really good unit, and they managed to hold the Patriots offense in check. I think Drake May's really good, but when we look at the playmakers, Ian, there's no one striking massive fear into you. We like Stephon Diggs. We don't love him anymore. We like Hunter Henry. We don't love him. Really, the running backs, Ramondre Stevenson is the hot hand. Kayshon Boutte, we talked about about him earlier. We like him, but like if we were starting NFL franchises today, like Kayshon Boutte wouldn't be one of the top 45 wide receivers we would take on our starting team. So like while he's been nice for where they got him and what he's been able to do for the team, like the Texans should be able to handle these weapons. So I think this will come down, honestly. I think this will come down to the Patriots defense and just being able to do their job against CJ Stroud. Obviously, without Nico Collins, that would go a long way for the Pats.
I had one quick check as you were talking, Dwayne. I had an epiphany. I was like, wait, hold on. What if Drake May and company are worse when he's pressured, but when the defense doesn't blitz? No, they're actually the best offense in the league in terms of PPA per drop back when that happens. So again, every number Drake May is going to tell you he's been awesome this year because he has. Maybe the schedule has played a little bit into that, but obviously, we saw what he did last week after he calmed down against the Chargers. At this point, continuing just to lean on that schedule argument, I don't think it's in play as much as many would believe. So with you, man, it seemed like Diggs was peaking just 16 yards last week. Mentioned Kayshon Boutte at the beginning of the show and everything he can do deep, but yes, certainly still not someone that we will be putting on the short list of the very best wide receivers in the game by any stretch. Ramondre Stevenson, though, this year now, RB1 in rushing yards over expected per carry. Travion RB10, but man, really do have two good running backs there in New England. And it could be on them to hopefully control this game. But as we move on to that Texans offense, Dwayne, this is going to be the decider because, man, as much as the Patriots defense did look great against the Chargers last week, I don't know, man, the more I'm seeing breakdowns about Justin Herbert's performance, kind of seemed like he got flustered early, wasn't able to find some of the open opportunities. Not saying that couldn't happen to CJ Stroud. He hasn't exactly been lights out this year, but my one really big takeaway here, and this is one of the more surprising things I found researching for this show, this Patriots run defense, massive strength to start the year, really hasn't been lately, Dwayne. Weeks 1 through 9, we're talking about being the third best defense in yards per rush allowed. Also third best defense in the EPA allowed per rush. Weeks 10 through the wild card, 26th and 27th, man. Woody Marks coming off his best game of the year. If the Texans could run the ball, CJ Stroud can limit mistakes, not fumble 5 freaking times again, there's a path to victory here.
Yeah, there was a stretch, though, that they didn't have Milton Williams. So it'd be interesting if you put that into your true media sheet in front of you, plays without Milton Williams, because when they were really good early in the season, they had him. They had a stretch of bad games there, and then they got him back. And I do think they've been a little bit better getting him back. So I think the challenge, though, is can the Texans really take advantage of it? You talked about Woody Marks really coming off of his best performance of the season against a pretty good run defense in their own right, with the Chargers. So it's certainly possible. But if we look at the full body of work for the Texans, this is the outlier performance, for their run game. And if they don't have Nico Collins, the defense is going to know that. That allows them to allocate more resources to stopping the run. Plus, you have Christian Gonzalez. Speaking of a big difference, in the games without Christian Gonzalez, the Patriots have been a minus 0.05 defense in EPA per play. That put them in the bottom third. With him in the lineup, though, they've been really good, and that gets them to 8th best EPA per play defense on the season overall. So I do agree. If the Texans can't get the run game going, that's gonna help them. I will say, to the Texans' credit, one thing they will do is they'll try to stick with it, even if it's not working. They do have the head coach that's willing to stick with the run game because he knows that's the way to keep the Patriots defense from getting to a scenario where they can just tee off on CJ Stroud. So I would agree, if the Texans can run the ball, that goes a long way for them here. But if I had to put odds on them being able to do it, I'm not that crazy about it.
And by the way, we are tentatively expecting Christian Gonzalez to clear the concussion protocol, manage to start this week of practice with a limited session, usually a good sign that you will be able to get through it by the end of the week. So my only pushback, Dwayne, because look, obviously we're better off with Nico Collins, but this Texans pass game group is pretty deep, man. Christian Kirk, 144 yards and a touchdown last week. I know he hadn't done a ton previously in the season, but Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, even Xavier Hutchinson, and yes, guys, Dalton Schultz has had a good season as well. I mean, that's not again, when you kind of take away your number one wide receiver, I just don't think that this team is maybe as doomed as other ones would be. Am I stretching there?
I don't think you're stretching on the depth. I think that Josh Allen might give $20 million of his salary to have those wide receivers. But if we look at it relative to the rest of the league, and not really relative to the rest of the league, but relative to Nico Collins, Nico Collins is really, a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL. I think in the right offense, in the right situation, everything working right, this would be a guy that could be a top 3 fantasy player. So it's clearly going to hurt. But to your point, I think you do have enough other weapons to still stress the Texans defense. And who are they really going to decide to put Christian Gonzalez on? The nice thing that Christian Kirk will have going for him, Ian, is he will get to operate from the slot. 71% of his routes have come from that territory this year. And typically Christian Gonzalez is not going to travel inside.
Takes us to our prediction. I got an upset, Dwayne. Give me the Texans 19, the Patriots 17, another low-scoring game. I'm not convinced this Patriots defense is elite enough to completely shut down the Texans, and I do think the Texans defense is elite enough to make life tough for Drake May and company. So again, as great as Drake May has been this year, I don't know, man. I guess maybe it's just the lack of a true rock star at wide receiver. I could just see him, again, not having as much success as we have seen, finding his way to 17 points. But man, said it last week, before the playoffs started, if I had to put my chip on one overall side of the ball being the best of any in these playoffs, I do think it is this Texans defense. So give me them with the upset. Based on the way you've been talking, Dwayne, I think you're on the other sad of the fence here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Patriots to win, and I think they're going to cover. The game model over at Fantasy Life, so AKA Friedman's model, the big brain of Matthew Friedman, where he's taken into account, guys, all the injuries, the travel, the weather, how tall the grass is on the field, all this different stuff. Got it at -4.5 Patriots favorites versus the -3 right now in the market. So that's one of the best edges right now in the model. I also have two quick prop bets here, Ian. Number one, Christian Kirk. I just talked about him operating from the slot, which I think does help him. But man, still 19% targets per route run on the season is fine, but 1.27 yards per route run. For the most part, Christian Kirk has not been good this year. Right now, his props at 48.5. We haven't projected at 37. So I would take the under on that. I know, guys, I'm being a Debbie Downer. The lines are really tight this week, and typically in those scenarios, I'm just going to lean to the unders because the unders hit more often than the overs. So you're not going to hear me say a lot of overs on the show today. The one other one I would take would be the rushing prop under on Drake May. It's set at 35.5. That's only 1 yard below Josh Allen. And I get it. You're playing the Texans who do cover players up. I know it's the playoffs, so we also get more rushing or scrambles by quarterbacks. We saw it last week for Drake May, but I still just think that's too high. He's only beat that number in 32% of his games over the last two seasons where he played at least 75% of the snaps. So I think that's just a bit steamed. And while he might hit it, the Texans rank, I think, 6th in yards per scramble allowed. So, there is a chance he could get there. Still, like, if I was betting this 100 times, I think betting the under is the way to go on Drake May's rushing prop.
That Texans defense is sideline so fast. I'm with you. Haven't exactly been dominant against rushing QBs, but I do think those two unders are good calls. Takes us to our last game of the week, and we did save the best for last, guys. It is the Xfinity Best Game of the Week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity. Imagine that. Sunday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. We got the Bears hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Rams are 3.5-point road faves at Soldier Field. Game total up there of 48.5, despite some actually inclement weather, Dwayne. So again, this is a situation where we have very cold temperatures. It's going to be in the teens. Feel like temperatures given the wind actually could be in single digits. Could see 10 to 15 mile per hour wind with gusts up to 20, 25 miles per hour. Per Kevin Roth, though, again, check out Kevin's great work over at Roto Grinders. He said there's actually some very strong post-game winds that he does wonder if, as we get closer to Sunday, actually could see, again, those creep more into game time. So Bears, obviously, thrilling comeback last week against the Packers. Rams needed a late touchdown of their own, though, to fend off the Panthers. So look, I feel like the Rams, we'll get to their offense in a little bit, but pretty straightforward. Puka Nacua is a god amongst all of us mere mortals. Run game is awesome too. The Bears are a little more interesting, Dwayne, because again, fourth quarter last week scored 25 points or whatever it was. Like, we know how explosive they can be, but how confident are you in the Bears actually being able to maybe sustain that level? Maybe not that level, but a high level of offense through all four quarters, because that's kind of just been the problem here, right? The explosive plays are there, but the down-to-down consistency just has been lacking.
Yeah, it could lead to problems, because if you do that against the Rams and you get down big early, then you become a predictable offense. And that's your biggest asset as an offense, especially in the playoffs where all these defenses are solid. The Rams have been slipping on defense while the Bears offense has been ascending. So I think that works to the Bears' favor, but you just don't want to get behind early in the game and just create scenarios where those big plays are harder to make. I get it, guys. Caleb Williams came through last week and was able to pull it off, but you don't want that to be your recipe every single week. And Caleb's still certainly capable of doing that. I think he's proven that, look, no game is really out of reach. He can get hot at the right time and just make crazy plays that honestly only 3 or 4 other quarterbacks maybe in the league can make. So that's always working in their advantage. I think the big thing for the Bears, though, Ian, is just they've been steadily just getting better all year, even though they still have some of these problems with, just staying on schedule. If you look at their EPA per play, they now rank 9th on offense overall. If you look at them as far as passing goes, they rank 9th. And if you look at them in the run game, they rank 4th. So I think that's the other key. If you can stay on schedule with the run game, really helping out Caleb Williams and keeping this game close early, that's really going to be the recipe, in my opinion, for the Bears. And I think obviously the other big thing, key to success, no one's figured this out yet, guys, but stopping Puka. I mean, can you just slow Puka down enough? I mean, because here's the thing, like if any defense could ever take away Puka Nacua, what would the Rams offense look like? I know we like Devontae Adams. He's a good player, but he's not Puka Nacua. He is the engine of this offense. So if I'm playing the Rams, and I know every other defensive coordinator in the league, is probably looking at this and go, this guy's a complete idiot. We've all tried. Sean McVay's going to come up with some way to get Puka open, but I would be trying to give every resource I could to taking away Puka Nacua and making the other Rams beat me if I am the Bears.
It's just so hard, man. It's not like you can just take your number one cornerback, and let's face it, Jalen Johnson been playing a little bit banged up here, not exactly been his best self. I mean, Puka's catching touchdowns lined up in the backfield. He's getting, rush attempts here every other week or so. I mean, just the things he can do both downfield and obviously schemed up, man, really has been impressive. As we mentioned to start off our last show, guys, Puka number 1 in NFL history in receiving yards per game in the regular season, and also in the postseason, where he somehow even takes his game to another level. So again, unreal stuff there with Puka. Last thing though on the Bears offense, Dwain, you did mention the run game. That honestly has been a little bit of a weakness for the Rams down the stretch, just 18th in EPA allowed per rush since week 10. Pass game, I thought honestly probably dropped off more, just having watched some of these games and stuff. They did, but they went from 2nd to 13th in EPA allowed per dropback, so still generally pretty good. I do wonder if we do see the Bears just continue to lean on these rookie receivers, because they have been the top 2 guys against a zone-heavy defense like the Rams. Again, they play it at a top 10 rate. Colson Loveland and Luther Burden have seen their targets again really boom up against zone coverages. Burden in particular, man, has absolutely eviscerated zone. 3.17 yards per route run versus zone coverage. Only trails Jackson Smith and Jigba and Puka Nacua. And by the way, Dwain, I love how many yards per route run stats are like, third. Who's they behind every single time? Puka and JSN. So incredible stuff with them. But again, if we did try to say like, all right, Bears are going to, pull the upset at home and everything, Caleb Williams makes his Caleb Williams playmaking plays at least a couple times. The run game continues to be very good. And I think one of these rookies in Colson Loveland and Luther Burden has to have a blow-up game.
Yeah, so Luther Burden, I think, is the one where you can make the prop bet this week. Colson Loveland was it last week, but now the market is caught up. Obviously, Loveland's been great, man. He's got a 100 utilization score over the last 4 games, guys. He's got a 30% target share. Dude is going absolutely nuts, but the props are really close with the projections and the fantasy life model. But Luther Burden, because of what happened last week, things have cooled a little bit. I've got him projected for 3.7 receptions, Ian, 42.5 receiving yards. The props are at 2.5 and 36.6. So those are both bettable. I will say one thing with the Rams, they're really good against interior pass catchers. Okay. Only 59.9 yards per game allowed. And so that does impact who? Colson Loveland and Luther Burden, the 2 guys we're talking about. But I just want to bet on the ascending talents. And so in the projection model, I gave a small dock just due to the matchup, but it's still solid for Burden. But man, Loveland is just going to be, he's the nightmare. Obviously, if the Bears are going to win this game, I think Loveland is going to be a key focal point. Luther Burden coming through with a big play, though, obviously would be huge. And the nice thing for the Bears, these 2 guys ascending at the right time for the NFL playoffs. Not quite enough for your fantasy playoffs. You got like a smidge of it, but for the real NFL playoffs, obviously these are the 2 guys that are the centerpieces of their offense. Also, you get Rome Odunze back, DJ Moore doing nice things. So I will say with the Bears, the nice thing they have is they have 4 or 5 guys plus the run game that they can really stress you with. They don't have to lock on to just one player, that makes things troublesome for the opposing defense.
So as we move on to the Rams, one of the first things I want to try to look at was like, all right, is there anything to the idea that maybe Matthew Stafford going outdoors, going to be windy there in Chicago? Could we see a downturn? And guys, you got to go about 3 games back in his game log to see, oh yeah, remember that time he torched arguably the best defense in the league in Seattle for 457 and 3 touchdowns in a game that Dwain, I remember us talking on our ranking show before, was very worryingly going to have high levels of wind. Doesn't matter again when you are Matt freaking Stafford, arguably the MVP of the league. So I'm not really overly concerned about these elements negatively impacting Stafford any more than it would another quarterback. I do wonder, though, if we do see, because of this, just unfortunate weather going down, maybe the Rams are able to lean on Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. Obviously, when you look at them on the season, both guys have had great years. And just in terms of success rate, guys, which does stuff where it's a better stat than yards per carry sometimes, because if it's 3rd and 1 and they gain 1 yard and get the first down, that's a positive play. So that helps your success rate. Obviously, yards per carry, just gaining 1 yard doesn't pop up the same way. The only 2 running backs this season with a success rate north of 60%, Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. So you mentioned before, Dwayne, let's imagine a world where Puka Nacua does get taken away somehow, or, only has 70 yards or something like that. I think it's the Rams really riding this run game that, again, even if it's not maybe the most explosive in the world, just consistently turns out yards with the best of them.
Yeah, and Sean McVay just always comes up with something. We're talking about the 3rd-ranked EPA per play passing offense. We're talking about the 7th-ranked EPA per play rushing offense. This is a very well-rounded offense, and it's versus below average EPA rank defense on the defensive side of the ball for Chicago in both of those categories. So I think that the Rams offense is going to do their thing. It's going to be up to the Bears offense to really try to keep up and keep the game close and not get out of hand. I think the Rams are going to score their points. I did give a small doc due to the temperature and winds, but based on the research from Chris Allen, that's how we handle it over in our projection model. How much do we take away from these guys? I'm still right in line with the passing prop market for Matthew Stafford. I think I'm 1 yard over what the aggregate props are. But if you look at Stafford, this is a plus 3.5 fantasy matchup, which is very hard to find on this slate, guys, as far as the Xfinity fantasy boost. And thank you for Xfinity, now the sponsor of our fantasy boost and points per game. Woo. So if you look at, that's the 3rd best matchup, man, for quarterbacks. The Bears have been. Now they've been a little bit better down the stretch, but man, the Rams offense is just too good. And even if they do manage to take away Puka, Ian, I do think they've got enough other weapons with, Devontae Adams, the tight ends, the running backs. Although I like I said earlier, that would be my strategy, would be to test that thesis, do everything I can to take away Puka. Here's the problem, Ian. The Bears give up 86.6 yards per game to interior pass catchers. That's the 4th most. They have really struggled with stopping good tight ends on the interior, as well as good slot wide receivers. And obviously, we know Puka, best wide receiver, probably top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, definitely the top slot wide receiver.
And that was kind of when I was trying to just get a prediction for this game. I was like, all right, best overall unit, I think it's the Rams offense. 2nd best, I'd probably say the Bears offense. 3rd, a little bit of a drop, Rams defense. 4th, massive drop, Bears defense. Yes. Okay, so maybe some, ruckus goes on special teams. Obviously, that has been a trouble for the Rams. We saw them, have a punt block last week against the Panthers. That Eagles lost earlier in the season, multiple kicks blocked. So weird things can happen. I know it's a football game, more than just offense and defense going on. But again, I just couldn't quite get over that Bears defense. Just looking at their performance against QBs, man, Jordan Love went for 323 and 4 touchdowns last week. He had another huge game with 3 touchdowns when they played earlier this season. Jared Goff, 331 and Todd. Brock Purdy had a great game. Malik Willis was really efficient in his, just snaps when he was taking over for Love. The last time the Bears truly shut down a quarterback, it was Shedeur freaking Sanders. Okay, so taking us to the prediction, I even tried to dig into all right, well, is this Bears defense are they a bend don't break unit? Are they good in the red zone? Answer, not really. Okay, can they get out the field on 3rd down? They have allowed the 7th highest rated 3rd down conversion. So I really tried to find a path, Bears fans. I just couldn't do it though. Give me the Rams 31, the Bears 24. I feel pretty good about it, Dwayne.
I have the Rams to win, the Bears to cover, but Matthew Friedman's model disagrees, Ian. This is the 5-star bet, according to Friedman and the Fantasy Life game betting model. The Bears, he has as a 0.5 favorite over the Rams. Whoa. Yeah, that's a huge difference versus the market right now, which has the Rams as a 3.5 point favorite. So that's a 4-point swing. You rarely get that in the betting model. So Friedman has the Bears as a 5-star bet. And I'm going to be doing an episode of Talk Data to Me with him later today, guys. Friedman's going to break that down more. And then we're going to do some underdog drafts where I think he's going to try to make me take all Bears for producer swing.
About to say, man, that is a shocking twist. We'll go ahead and see what happens there. But that's enough for us, Dwain. Make sure you guys do check out Talk Data to Me. Dwain and company always doing great stuff over on the other side of the pond. But yes, again, this has been brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity, imagine that. So good job, Mr. Dwain. And good job to you listening out there. Hope you guys have a great weekend. If you like the show, always appreciate hitting that subscribe button as well. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.